So over the years, I've tested a ton of different docks for my desk setup, whether it was those simple travel hubs that I use for my iPad, or those do-it-all desktop class docks that promise to do everything for you, but sometimes fall short of what they promise. But this one right here is the first one that has actually delivered on that promise. This is the iVANKY FusionDock Max 2, and it was purpose-built with Apple Silicon in mind. This is the first true MacBook dock with Thunderbolt 5 that supports up to 3 external displays. It also gives you 23 additional pro-grade ports, as well as staying cool to the touch and making your desktop look clean and sleek at the same time. So let me tell you all about iVANKY's brand new FusionDock Max 2. Let's get into it. So let's quickly do an unboxing here to find out what we get. So of course you get the Thunderbolt 5 dock itself, the FusionDock Max 2, and you can see that it has this kind of levitating chassis that looks amazing, but it's not just for looks, it actually is beneficial for cooling, which we'll touch on in a little bit. You also get a true Thunderbolt 5 cable, which again, those alone are anywhere from $60 to $150. Then you get the power cord, the AC adapter, and then of course all the paperwork that coincides with this to understand a little bit more of what you get. So like I mentioned in the very beginning, this is a 23-in-1 docking station. So you get 23 ports in this thing, and it has everything that you would ever need. Starting off on the front side, you of course get your power button, and then you get a microSD and SD card slot, which does support 4.0 UHS 2 storage, meaning it's going to be ultra fast, supporting 312 megabit per second transfer speeds, which is top in class. You also get a USB-C port that does support 10 gigabit speeds, as well as 30 watts of max charging. You get your 3.5mm headphone jack. You get an additional USB-C 10 gigabit per second transfer port. You get a USB-A port that supports the same speed, another USB-C port on the top there, and then 2 USB-A 5 gigabit ports, and then 2 USB-A 480 Mbps ports on the front side. So you get 5 total USB-A ports and 3 USB-C ports on the front. And then you turn it around on the back, and that's where it starts to get real nice. So from left to right, you get an additional 3.5mm headphone jack, you get a USB-A 400 Mbps port, you get a 2.5 Ethernet port, which is nice to have, an additional USB-A port that supports up to 5 Gbps, and then you have your USB-C upstream ports, and these are the ones that are going to support 140 watts of fast charging. So if you do use this alongside your 16-inch MacBook Pro, it is going to be a single cable solution, and it'll top off at the max speeds because it does support that 140 watt fast charging, and it also supports the fastest possible 120 gigabit per second transfer speeds for little to no latency whatsoever when you are dealing with any data transfer speeds and when you are working off of any SSD or any computer there and after. And then you get 3 more additional USB-C downstream ports which support the same 120 Gbps and does support 15 watt charging. You get 2 more USB-C ports which support 10 gigabit transfer speeds, as well as your DC in, and then finally a security slot. So again, like I said, this thing is going to be able to handle everything that you throw at it. And then of course you get your 4K HDMI port as well for that third display that we mentioned earlier. So aside from this having every port that you would ever need in a USB-C or Thunderbolt 5 dock, there's 2 other things that really set it apart from the rest of the competition. The first one is going to be that native support for 3 external monitors. So just with this dock alone, you are able to support up to 3 4K monitors from one device, or dual 6K monitors, which is something that not a lot of docks can handle. And iVANKY does have a great kind of illustration that I'm going to put up on the screen right now to let you know which MacBooks are going to be natively able to support how many screens, what type of displays, whether it's 4K, 6K, or 8K. But basically, if you have any max level M chips, so it's an M1, M2, or M3 Max, you're able to support all of the triple displays directly from the dock itself. And then also, if you have the M4 Max MacBook, you can support up to dual 8K displays at 60 Hz, which is absolutely unheard of. So that is one of the biggest differentiators with the iVANKY 23-in-1 FusionDock Max 2. And then secondly is the design and the cooling that's in here, as well as the efficiency that's done in here. So like I mentioned earlier, it does have that beautiful floating chassis design, which I think just looks great to begin with, but it's there for a reason. It also has a built-in fan, so it does suck in and blow out air very efficiently, so it is able to maintain that consistent cooling even after hours of rendering or heavy file transfers. It stays cool and completely stable with no dropouts, no throttling, and like I said, it does stay cool to the touch, which in a world with Thunderbolt 4 and Thunderbolt 5 docks is a rarity. And from the test that I'm showing off right here, you can see that Thunderbolt 5 has those data speed and transfer speed advantages, being able to move at that 120 Gbps that I mentioned earlier. So finally, the big takeaways from this is that this does support up to those triple 4K displays. It gives you 23 ports, so you have all the different malleability and all the different optionality that you would need, whether you are using an M1 MacBook Air or a fully loaded M4 Max MacBook Pro. And then you also have the support for 140 watt fast charging, you have the active cooling, and that beautiful kind of cool design that does kind of round everything off aesthetically. Now, one big caveat here to mention at the very end is that this is purpose-built for Apple Silicon, so this will not work with Intel-based Macs or Intel-based Windows computers. But if you do have an M1 or newer Mac, you'll have no problems whatsoever using this beast. So if you are in the market for a Thunderbolt 5 dock to pair up with your MacBook Pro, or maybe even something like your Mac Mini or your Mac Studio or your Mac Pro, I highly recommend giving the iVANKY FusionDock Max 2 a shot. And for us 9to5 Mac viewers, you get 10% off if you use the code 10SALE9to5, which I'll put on the screen and leave it down in the description below. But big shout out to iVANKY for partnering up with 9to5 Mac again. We love their products, I love their dock, and this dock is now my main dock in my main hub for my M4 Mac Mini. But that'll do it for this video. If you guys made it to the end, leave a little dolphin, check out all the links below, and until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace, everyone.